Hi, I'm Jon Atack, and I've got a little bit of a black eye today, but you should see the other guy. And I'm, as ever, delighted to welcome Karen de la Carriere. Hi, Karen. How are you doing?
Jon, I thought of you. Seems like longer than a monthly thing. Hi, Jon. Hi.
Yes.
Hey, everybody. Hello, Jon.
It's good.
Jon, we all have falls once in a blue moon. It was a freak fall. You're going to heal very fast.
Yes, I'm sure I will. And as we said, the show must go on. We pay no attention to these things. I also lost a leg. And no, I'm just
scarred.
But you know, I have to go on with it. It's the Black Knight in Monty Python's Holy Grail, where John Cleese has his limbs chopped off and says, "Come back, you cowards! I've had worse." But so I'm probably going to keep my specs on. Who knows? I might take them off.
Yes.
Full glory of the zygomatic arch. But today we're going to talk about the incredible pressure of what's called heavy regging in Scientology. Regging being registration or well, sales in English, you know. And Scientology employs a method that's used hard selling. And I have some interesting quotations. This little book that I wrote called Scientology, The Cult of Greed, which is really a primer for people who've had nothing to do with Scientology and are curious about some of the more extreme activities. In a dispatch called What is Life Worth? The Importance of Hard Sell, Ron Hubbard said, hard sell, capital letters, is a must, capital letters, in dissemination and selling of services and materials. In another dispatch, he says of hard selling, you tell him that he's going to sign up right now, and he is going to take it right now. One does not describe something, one commands something. You will find that a lot of people are in a more or less hypnotic daze, and they respond to direct commands in literature and ads. Hard sell means insistence that people buy. And Hubbard made his notions clear in this passage. Again, capitalized, never let anyone simply walk out, and never let a student leave or quit. Introvert him like a bullet. Further, you have to be willing to invade privacy, very definitely. Recruits don't have any rights. In Internal Issues, Hubbard derided non-members as wogs, an English racist term, called them dead in the head and raw meat. So that's how Ron Hubbard felt about the population of the planet Earth and how he felt you ought to deal with them. They're mainly hypnotized anyway, so just command them and tell them they've got to sell, they've got to buy right now. Actually, I've missed a passage, which I've just got one more to add, which is talking about the upper levels, the operating Thetan levels, the secret courses. Hubbard said, advanced courses are the most valuable service on the planet. Life insurance, houses, cars, stocks, bonds, college savings, all are transitory and impermanent. Advanced courses last forever and give immortality. There is nothing to compare with advanced courses. They are infinitely valuable and transcend time itself. So rush out and buy the advanced courses immediately. It only cost you about $250,000. Well worth it.
Well, throw in a little anecdote to make the point. Any person posted as their job for sales to get money does not get payroll till they finish their HAT, which is their training course on how to get the money. And on the course is a book which all automobile companies insist their sales agent. It's called Big League Sales by Les Dane.
Big League Sales Closing Techniques. Yeah.
Closing techniques. And that is mandatory for Scientology spiritual salespeople to study and learn before they can even get a paycheck.
I mean, I was truly shocked. we've been in Scientology. I've been in Scientology for 8 years as a public member, never on the staff, never a living member. And we ran a small art agency. We sold paintings. And my wife, my wife to be, we weren't married at that time, but she signed up to do the registrar sales course. And I'd never seen this material before. And I was absolutely horrified by what I saw in this, to find out that all of the tricks that had been used on me over the years, the idea that of tag teaming, for example, where there's a microphone hidden in the room and there's somebody in the next room listening in and waiting for the moment to come in and join in on the thing. The idea that registrars will keep a folder of your loves and hates, the things that they can use against you. I mean, the longest interview I had was 13 hours, non-stop, didn't eat, nothing happened. These guys came around, and the one of them was he'd been the technical secretary UK. He'd been the top guy in the tech, and he'd worked out, of course, that he could get 2% commissions by being a salesman and not have to live in dire poverty. So he transferred over, and he came with a guy called Lee Lawrence, who hopefully is dead by now, because it's certainly what he deserves. The amount of people I talked to after I'd left who'd taken loans from Lee Lawrence, and Lee Lawrence had already written the check for me, which was £7,000 or something to do the next bit of OT5. And they spent 13 hours seeking to persuade me to take the check. And the interest rate was 30%. And this guy just traveled around with the registrar, and he was a loan shark. He basically, under English law, you couldn't loan more than a certain amount. So would always keep below that level. And I say, after I left, a number of people came to me and said, how on earth am I ever going to pay this interest back? And I said, you don't have to. It's an illegal loan. Don't pay him a cent. So I made his life a little bit more difficult, and I'm very glad about that. I think that was a very ethical thing to do.
Scientology is a greedy, high control authoritarian group. Will say anything, do anything to extort the money from you.
Yeah.
Now, an example is Hubbard wrote a policy saying, if you attain the state of clear, you are at risk if you don't get straight onto your OT levels.
Yep.
So when you're just a little grade 1, you're not at any risk. When you're lower down, just life for grade 3, you attain clear, and now you're at risk. You're in danger. You're in spiritual danger if you don't give them a quick $40,000 for the OT3 package. Explain, John. How can that be? How can a higher state make you more at risk?
Yeah.
That's not a safe pitch.
And what's being sold in Scientology is desperation. You want to make people desperate, and the carrot keeps on moving. When you've done this level, you'll have these abilities. After you've done the very low level of communication release, you'll be able to communicate freely to anyone on any subject. Yeah, really. After you've done, you can't, except for suppressive people, and you can't talk about your case, your problems, unless you pay money to do it. And of course, you can't talk about Scientology because that's verbal technology. Outside of these rules, you'll be able to communicate freely to anyone on any. You can't tell the cops about Scientology, of course. And you can't say anything unpleasant about Ron Hubbard. But within these rules, you can communicate freely to. Then the next level is level 1, where you'll be able to find the source of problems and make them disappear. Really, the source of problems is usually the Scientology registrar. The amount of people I met who literally bankrupted themselves, borrowing money to chase after this carrot. And it's always the next level, the next level, the next level. This would be the one. And along the way, of course, you get the euphoria. This, the very good indicators, which is a way of saying euphoria, which is a perfectly normal effect of hypnotism, I'm afraid. If you guide somebody's imagination somewhere, you can make them feel great. But cocaine makes people feel great. And it can have some pretty unpleasant side effects too. Addiction being one of the effects of both cocaine and Scientology, this need to keep going. I had a friend, and he told me that he'd read my book, Let's Sell These People a Piece of Blue Sky, and somewhere around 2000 or something. And he's the only person I've met who didn't leave after reading the book. And I said, well, why did you stay? And because what happened was his son read the book a few years later and said, why are we still involved with this? And he said to me, because I'd lose my immortality. I'd lose my immortality. I would no longer be an immortal being if I didn't keep paying money to run Hubbard. Just unbelievable.
Yeah. The two most ghastly, hideous things about Scientology, two things: bankrupt you to the point of they don't care. They never admit they're sitting with $3 billion as they try to make you take out a second mortgage on your home and empty all your bank. They're the ones sitting with buying endless real estate, increasing their real estate portfolio. They're wealthy. They're billionaires. You little guy out there. The two most obnoxious things is disconnection, breaking up families, ordering families to be split apart if one member of the family starts being critical or is reading the web or whatever. They destroy families and they extort your money. I think, John, you're the wizard here. You're the learned person. Do you agree those two things, the high control to get every dime, even get the gold out of your teeth, just octopus tentacles to find that money and get it out of you, that and disconnection, in my opinion, are the two worst features. Do you agree? And if tell me your views on that.
They're certainly two of the worst features. I think the way that the staff are treated, and you know a great deal about that, as slaves, bullied, punished, their lives ruined, their health not cared for. So I'd put those three things together. I mean, let's face it, Ron Hubbard liked triangles, didn't he? So those will make it a three-pointed thing. And as you say, the perverse thing is that it's not even that they are billionaires. The last accounting I know of actually said they had $4 billion, and that was a few years ago.
Easily, that data, easily.
Just an incredible amount of money. And that money is owned by one human being. Nobody in Scientology has taken benefit from it because the staff are being punished for working for Scientology. They're being told endlessly, if we don't do this now, then what is it? The whole agonized future of every man, woman, and child on this planet depends on what we do here and now in Scientology. Yeah. And for a long time, I wondered whether the word agonize was in there, because when you read what that's actually saying, it means that the whole future of humanity will be agonized, and it depends on what we do in Scientology. It's like, he's telling the truth. If Scientology wasn't there, maybe there'd be some chance for the future of humanity not to be agonized. These strange Freudian slips do occur in Hubbard's writing quite frequently.
You're right about punishment and abuse. That is a big, big feature. But I've said this before on other shows. It isn't just punishment. In Scientology, the punishment always carries an edge of humiliation to degrade the person.
It's
so while they claim they're taking you higher spiritually, join us and we'll enlighten, they're actually taking you lower, squashing you into a dot. For example, let's say you're ordered to hard manual labor. Now, if you just had to vacuum floors, scrub the walls, that's one thing. But you would be ordered to hard manual labor to clean dumpsters with a toothbrush, or to clean toilets only. You can only do toilets 12 hours a day, cleaning toilets. I talked on another show, and the host was horrified. A Swedish Nordic guy from Denmark, Sea Org member, was ordered by David Miscavige to clean the bathroom floor with his tongue. His tongue! He had to clean a floor. I don't know how much his jaw must have ached. Can you imagine? Can you see the edge of humiliating and degrading? It isn't just standard punishment. It's punishment to gaslight you and subdue you into what I call it, shrink you down to be a dot. Comments?
Yeah, absolutely. Psychologists call it trauma bonding. Leah Remini talked with me about it when she was reading about it. And it's
the Stockholm syndrome. As you start adoring your captor.
Yeah, very much like Stockholm syndrome, only it's brought about not simply by captivity, but by humiliating a person. It's why abused spouses find it so hard to leave the relationship, especially because, you know, at the one end you've got all of the trauma, and then at the other end you've got the appreciation, you know, the charm, the you know, how much I love you for what you're doing. Now, of course, Scientology misses that part out. All you get is the trauma. It hit me like a thunderbolt when I saw the pictures of overboarding. I think it's Auditor number 41, the magazine of Scientology. And as a member, I'd never seen this early 1968 issue of the magazine. And somebody came around and said, "Oh, here, I'm throwing out this collection of these magazines." And so I'm flicking through them, and I find this double-page spread, and there is the Remberez, in fact, helping to cheerfully throwing somebody overboard, and they've got him raised up and they're chucking him overboard. Now, I'd heard about it, but then I looked down and it said the photo credit was to L. Ron Hubbard. So there, you know, all of this, oh, Ron didn't know about this. And this sort of conflict, this double bind that so often happens with Scientology, we go, so the origin of Scientology, Dianetics, is the relief of trauma. And yet by 1968, when OT3 is finally being delivered, the wall of fire is being traversed, the infliction of trauma has become the purpose of Ron Hubbard and Scientology. And this contradiction, in The Shrinking World of Ron Hubbard, the wonderful film that Charlie Nairn made in 1968, when you see the Sea Org crew lined up on the ship, and they're all just so defeated, so abused and humiliated. And this is, you know, this about the time that Hubbard's saying these are the world's elite, you know, not really. So yeah, people being beaten into subservience rather than raised into liberty.
Yeah, it did a backflip, and it was just completely doing the reverse. There was a whole saga. We dubbed it the spitting culture. Hubbard sent down, when he would be sending down advices. He really was running the show, but he was named a consultant sending advices. And he got really mad with a lovely British guy. I don't know if he's dead or alive. Jon Atack. Jon Atack's parents ran a gallery in Mayfair. Near Hobby Hill or whatever, it was some Hay Hill. There's London's pretty flat, but this is an actual hill in it, right in
very exclusive district, Mayfair.
Very exclusive, and his parents were wealthy. But John, when I left, he'd already been in 35 years, and I left 10 years ago. So John was an evaluator. He trained in Hubbard's data series evaluator course.
So did I.
And I don't know what he messed up on, but Hubbard sent down this advice and said, if you see Jon Atack, go spit in his face. And it was Chuck Beatty, who posts a lot on the internet. Chuck Beatty.
That's Chuck. He's wonderful.
He read. I think he was the first one who said, well, the spitting came from Hubbard. Hubbard sent it down, and then Hubbard sent another one to spit at Roger Barnes.
Roger Barnes, yeah.
Who was the head of the mission. It was he ran, right. So So then spitting, we're talking about humiliating in punishments. Now, if you spit, you could shed your COVID spots. I don't think the spitting occurs right now. By the way, John, in the last few months, relentlessly, the body routers have been on the corner of Sunset and Vermont. There's Children's Hospital, Kaiser, it's a huge crossroads. And they're dressed with black jackets and spiffy white shirts. And they were just drawing people in, no mask, not wearing any mask, taking people off the street and bringing them in. And then Omicron, what do you call it? The new variable. And suddenly, only in the last 3-4 days, there are no body routers. I have heard of a house, an apartment building down the road, which are full of COVID people. They're quarantined in their own building away from the rest of the Sea Org. But back to my point, spitting, if Hubbard said to spit in his face, which was in the advice, then David Miscavige really went to town on that. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if I remember rightly, the first time I heard about this was after the Mission Holders Conference in October 1982. And there's a picture in one of the little things, it's called The Sea Org Moves In. Tony Ortega's just done a long piece on it because I managed to dig out a tape recording that somebody secretly made at that meeting, which for some reason is not identical with Scientology's transcript. And but there's a picture of Miscavige pointing at somebody. I for a while I had correspondence from a guy who was there who said that Miscavige grabbed him by the throat and banged him against a filing cabinet. Martin Samuel.
Did that Jefferson Hawkins? Did that to Jefferson Hawkins?
There must have been somebody else as well. It's somebody who really didn't want me to mention his name, so I'm not going to.
Okay.
And in fact, initially communicated with me under a pseudonym before I said, I'm not talking to you until I know who you are. But Martin Samuels was pretty much beaten up there, and there's this story about him having had his Rolex pulled away. Samuels, of course, was the most successful Scientology mission holder in the world, and had founded the Delphi schools and lost, I think, 5 missions, including the Portland, Oregon mission along the way. But this, just thorough and absolute nastiness that goes on. And as you say, spitting at people, making people lick the floor with their tongues. It's despicable. It's an absolute violation of human rights, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with spirituality or anything that should dare to call itself a religion.
You hear of tales of the Hare Krishnas and the Moonies, but I don't think they have punishments such as lick the bathroom floor with their tongue. By the way, that trickled down. That happened at Intbase.
Yes.
And then Flag, I heard of a couple of cases where the ethics officers now felt, that's a good new punishment. And do you know, John, the level of indoctrination is so deep. Well, I know because I was deeply, deeply in. This Swedish guy who had to, for 2 hours, lick the bathroom floor to white glove standards with his tongue. Do you know he went right back on post? He didn't ask to leave. He didn't think to himself, I didn't sign up for this. This is horrendous. He goes right back on post. He does almost like a beaten wife. I deserve that punishment. And now I'm going to work for my stats and produce. So do you see the indoctrination in this little anecdote?
Yes, absolutely.
So spitting, it became a spitting culture. So-and-so spitted on so-and-so, so-and-so, and all these stories have surfaced on ex-Scientology message board and stuff. So, but spitting is a very degrading kind of flow.
Yes.
And they crave to have validation as an ecclesiastical religious entity. But look at the behavior inside. The other thing I wanted some comments from you on is the mafia, these mobs work in a way, certainly in New York with the big five families, where they must get a cut of your weekly earnings. Did you see The Sopranos series?
Yes, some years ago I watched a few,
Yeah.
those 3 series.
They enter the restaurant. What did you make this? The cut. They take a cut. Well, Scientology truly behaves on that principle. They want a cut of your weekly earnings. They show up. It's been a week since you paid in some. What can you do this week for us? It's unbelievable, but they believe that they own authoritatively a percentage of your money.
Well, they brought about the World Institute of Scientology Enterprises, or WISE, Wise Up, as I like to think of it, to do exactly that, to take tithes from business people, and you got registered in their directory and you got to pay them 10%. Before that, of course, there'd been the Mission Network who were paying their 10%. Hubbard was, there's always this business thing running alongside Scientology, and he created so many, the Allied Scientists of the World, or the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, Concerned Citizens. There were all sorts of political groups, all sorts of things, which were put forward as fronts. That's something the Moonies do. The Moonies actually have something like 2,000 front groups. They really ran away with the idea. The Collegiate Association for Research into Principle, or CARP, which is not really a very clever name, but there you go. But yeah, everything is, when he first talked about making Scientology a religion, a letter of the 10th of April 1953 to Helen O'Brien, who was his immediate deputy, the head of the Hubbard Association of Scientologists, he said, "What do you think of the religion angle?" And then talked about we couldn't be making less money than we are doing. So his whole thing is about how much money can we make, the governing policy, make money, make others produce so as to make even more money, which is called the governing policy. I never saw that when I was a member. There are all of these things going on in the background. I've said it before and I'll say it again. For a while, Let's Sell These People a Piece of Blue Sky was called Hubbard Through the Looking Glass. If you look in the back of Russell Miller's Barefaced Messiah, that's the manuscript he refers to, and indeed the manuscript that he started from and that his book, came out of, because it wasn't published then. But it is through the looking glass. It's that realization that it's the opposite of what it says it is. You've gone through the mirror and everything's backwards. He's not here to liberate the world. He's here to enslave the world. And as he said, in Scientology, we have ways of making slaves here.
Yeah. So true.
And he was right.
So true.
Wise.
Go ahead.
Well, Wise is just another example of how you get people to pay. What was it called? I Help, the International Hubbard Ecclesiastical League of Pastors, which came around in about 1983, and a friend of mine said it should be called I Should Cocoa. you pull the other one. You wrote me a note about a 78-year-old woman, was it?
Oh, yeah. Barbara.
I've
told the story before, but it just touched my heart. Barbara was a dedicated Scientologist. And a few years ago, her husband died. She was 78 years old. And while the dead body of her husband was in the morgue, 4 Sea Org members descended on her at 11 o'clock at night and left 4 hours later at 3 in the morning. They wore their lanyards and their fruit salad and their Sea Org naval caps when a group of 4 in full regalia uniform, it gives a kind of intimidating presence.
And how?
So there were 4 against 1. They took everything. They took the husband's life insurance, his pension, her social security. She had to mortgage the home. She had to go back to work. And they left in one night, 4 hours, Les Dane, big league sales closing techniques, $1 million in 4 hours. And then her house was free and clear, but it now had to, they got it all. There was no mercy that she had just lost her husband. You see, Scientology, they justify humiliating punishments. It's all justified. And this is the argument, John. Hey, you're immortal. You're going to live billions of years more and trillions of, so what if you're a bit upset and uncomfortable in this one lifetime is a blink of an eye. So get with it. So what if you're persecuted in one lifetime? So what if you feel totally messed up? You're going to live another billion years. Forget it. That's the justification. You're going to live on and on. Who cares if you're unhappy and you feel ripped off this lifetime? Who cares? In the grand scheme of things, how big a deal is it?
Yeah,
that's a clever justification.
If we fail in Scientology, then all life will be extinguished throughout the universe, no doubt. I heard a dreadful story a few years ago, about 5 years ago. And this is something that happened in East Grinstead, near to St. Hill, the headquarters of Scientology, just south of London, where Ron Hubbard lived for a few years until he was banned from being in the country, for very good reason, I think. And this woman had, she'd been in the Sea organization, I think, for 40 years. And she'd reached the age where she could no longer work. And so she'd been thrown out. And that's what happens. I've known that happen quite a number of times. People who gave their whole lives working a 90-hour week for $5 a week if they were lucky, and being bullied and pushed around throughout that time and insulted and abused. And so she'd been thrown out. And the next thing that happened was that some of these registrars, doubtless wearing their lovely SEAL uniforms, which are actually Coast Guard uniforms, by the way, and they wear medal ribbons, which is actually against the law, both in the US and here, but nobody prosecutes them for it. And it's an insult to people who've actually fought in wars and earned
stolen valor.
Stolen valor, exactly. So they turn up at her door, probably late at night, as you say, and they said, well, you've done all of the OT levels and you've done all of this training. And the problem is this, that if you don't do superpower, then they'll catch you on one of the implant stations when you die, and they'll strip away all of the benefits of Scientology. That'll be £35,000, please, because she also, of course, had to buy new copies of all of the books, which have been carefully repunctuated by David Miscavige. One hates to think. I'm not really sure how well he can read and write, but we won't get into grammatical problems there. I think Mike Rinder was telling me, that he and I think it was John Horwich or somebody, they were given 6 weeks to rewrite, properly repunctuate a book. And it took Miscavige, I think, 7 years to actually finish the project personally. But, he's a little bit slow, spends most of his time shouting at people. And I always have this image of David Miscavige because he's a smoker, isn't he? So just like Hubbard, he's a smoker, but he's also, just like Hubbard, he's an asthmatic. So in one hand, he's got a Ventolin inhaler going, and in the other hand, he's got a Camel cigarette. And you're going, you're not very bright, are you? Cause and effect, or whatever. She had to spend £2,000 or something buying new copies of all the books she already had. And, she's in her 70s. She now realizes that every penny of her pension is going to pay this debt that she's accumulated. And there is no compassion involved. There is no empathy involved. It's buy now or else, And I sat through enough of these registrar interviews as a member. And I mean, my mum went to Scientology to, I was 19 when I got involved. And she went along to see if it was a dangerous thing. and she got involved. And one of the stories that she told with great annoyance, for the 30 years after she left Scientology or whatever, was about, I think, Neil Gaiman, the now incredibly successful writer. He was part of the team that went up to try and extract money from her. And she was flabbergasted that, she'd have been in her 50s at this time. Yeah, around about 60. And these people arrive and they're saying, well, why don't you mortgage your house and give us the money? Saying, I've worked my whole life to buy this house. And you just wonder, yes, but, advanced courses are the most valuable service on the planet. Look what Ron says, cars, houses, stocks, bonds. None of it's worth anything. What's really worth something is putting something into Ron Hubbard's bank account.
Yeah.
Ron Hubbard died with $648 million, all of it taken from Scientology. And that's just what he didn't manage to spend. While Sea Organization members are living in squalor and in poverty and, working a 12-hour day. I talked with a woman who worked at Gold, an illustrator, and I asked her, how much sleep did you get? And she said, on a good night, I get 5 hours.
Yeah.
He said, but usually I got 2. And you're going, do you know that under the Geneva Convention, that's torture?
Yeah.
And it's, in normal practice, you're torturing people so that they'll make more money so they won't lose their immortality. It's like, and we're the most ethical group on the planet. Oh, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing is there's only X amount of things to sell. Hubbard died. And if he didn't write it, it's not looked on as something biblical to be followed. So what Miscavige does is he orders people to recycle and redo what they've already done. Did you know that OT8s are ordered back to do the
Purification Rundown, in which you
flush out the drugs? This is the entry point. This is one of the first things you do in Scientology. So you go right up the bridge and then you circle. It's a Ferris wheel. Now you go back down and redo. I know people who've done the PTSSP course like 3 times, 4 times.
Oh, yeah.
They redo, they just recycle and resell you. So apparently the first time, even though they have all these case supervisors and qual and all that, apparently you didn't do it right. Because now, just for the sake of money, you're ordered to go back and redo.
But it's one of those situations like in a court. If it's found that a judge is corrupt, then all of the cases that judge has presided over are now open again. Well, it's the same in Scientology. If somebody who was involved in your auditing has now left, and there will be somebody, they're a suppressive person and you've been influenced by that and you have to go back through this. I had this great conversation with this wonderful man, Bert Griswold. Bert was, I think he was in his 80s when I met him, and he was just there are some really lovely people in Scientology. There really are. And Bert and his wife Eileen had left, and Bert was a highly trained auditor, and he was carrying on auditing people. And a lot of people were worried. They're saying, well, what if I don't have all my folders? You know what it's like, all the auditing folders, all the records, piles and piles of these damn things. And, so you can't do a folder error summary and find out what mistakes were made. And Bert just looked at me and he said, it'll read on the meter, won't it, if there's a problem? So all of those hours where you're paying to have somebody read all of the little spy notes. I mean, nowadays, of course, it's videoed a lot. So they can hit you up for 100 hours of just going back through what did they do wrong before?
Yeah.
And you get to pay for it.
Yeah, good point.
That's ethical,
Now, there's another point in all this extorting of money that a lot of audience will resonate with and feel incredibly upset, and that is no refunds. Even of unused portions that they extorted out of you, you try to get that back, They say, we don't have to refund donations. These were donations. And you run into brick walls. There are people with 200,000, 300,000. They've left Scientology. They've said, I don't want any of it. I'm not even a Scientologist. But I have $250,000 sitting there. Kiss it goodbye. This is dishonest. This is ripoff, theft, thievery, gangster mob thievery.
Yeah. in the extreme. And I mean, when I left, it was still possible to get repayments, which was to say money that you had on account.
No more.
But refunds, if you're asking for money back. And I found myself in a strange situation that the people who were leaving the independents, they thought it was fine to ask for a repayment. But if you had a particular service or disservice, as I like to think of it, then it would be improper to get your money back. And Hubbard, of course, in one issue says, of course, if people are unhappy, you give them their money back. And in another says you never give people their money back, which is a standard double bind, runs through Scientology. Almost every major point that he made, he also contradicted.
There were so many people asking for money back in the last 10 years that they opened a task force just to deal with it in the HEB on Hollywood Boulevard, the middle management building. And you know the trick is, geez, they say you need to fill in claims CVV routing form to get money back. But you have to come in to do the form.
Yep.
You have to sit on the cans and do a CS53 and blah, blah, find a withholding. Now, you can't come in because you're declared, because you've publicly disavowed Scientology. So the loop around is you can't get your money back till you do the CVB routing form, but you can't do the routing form because you're a declared SP. Therefore, your money is gone with the wind.
Yeah. And it is, we actually, when I left in 1983-84, we actually had our own little unit that processed claims and put them in. And the first thing that would be said was, you get a letter saying, we're not going to be coming in and doing a routing form, want the money back. And it was quite easy to go to what's called a small claims court for small amounts of money and get them back. But as you say, people now sign very elaborate legal contracts when they become involved with Scientology. And the contract reads something like, I hereby hand over...
Relinquish all claim, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, you own me now and can do whatever you want with me. Signed, and that it is not legal. It's a contract under duress. It's a contract without consideration legally. But the only person I know of who's actually been able to go from start to finish in the courts in the US is Lawrence Wallerstein. And that it took Lawrence 20 years to get $9.2 million, which was paid to him. There was this long campaign of not one thin dime.
Thin dime for Wallerstein.
Yeah, but he was paid. But it took 20 years. And I think at least 7 million of that went straight to the lawyers. And he put the rest into FactNet, and it's long gone. But he did set a precedent. What I'm hopeful of is that the precedent with Keith Raniere, and I did a lovely interview with Sarah Edmondson, who was the whistleblower on Nexium, that Raniere has been sent to prison for 120 years for racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. RICO. We tried a case of that type in the late 1980s against Hubbard, and it failed. But now that one's gone through, I'm hoping that David Miscavige is sweating a little bit, because in terms of human trafficking as well, of course, the FBI only got so far. The Headleys were helpful with them, and they decided they were frightened of Scientology, which is what government organizations, it's sort of, if you cause enough trouble, they won't bother with you. The IRS, I sat with an IRS guy in Reno, Nevada, and he was very suspicious of me. It's like, even though I've published what I've published, come on, people know who I am. But eventually he decided I was okay, and he could tell me, and he said, the first action ever to have had 1,000 IRS agents work on it is Scientology.
Wow.
And eventually they just went, they're too much trouble, and hit them for $12 million. And kind of going, look, the reason they couldn't give money, they couldn't give tax exemption to Scientology was because money inured. It was going into Ron Hubbard's bank account. And so we know he had $648 million when he died. That they only charged $12 million shows that, you know, they just caved in. They just gave in to the pressure, because it should have been at least a percentage of that 648, a normal tax percentage, and $12 million is not it. So somebody was blackmailed, somebody was tricked, you know, and it is a great injustice to the American people that Scientology is committing all of these scams, hiring private detectives. You know, the case that where Pat Broeker was being followed, that Tony Ortega reported on, where there was just a window of a day or two where the two private detectives were saying, we want to be paid. We're going to go public if you don't pay us. And they'd had 24 years of following Pat Broeker at a cost of, I think, about $11 million in total.
Yeah.
And that was tax-free money used for religious purposes. Come on, wake up, America, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Scientology absolutely does hate sites. The reason I keep doing videos is they've got a bunch of hate sites and hate videos on me. This inspires me to reveal more. I'll never go away as long as those sites are around. And not just mine, all the smear sites. They hire high-tech people. In fact, a director they hired to make some of these profusely apologized to me that he's done with them. He never was in Scientology, but he was hired by Gold. And now he's on Outer Banks, the forum that I run, and I'm learning more about what he had to do under the delusion he was helping a good group. But I want to tell you that Scientology smears former longtime staff who worked for them 20 years, 30 years, 40. The smearing of David Miscavige's own father.
Yes,
there's a bunch of videos on it. They're just sick. And the common denominator is these were criminals. These were criminal rapists, pedophiles, prostitute, any criminal label, but they should mirror on the wall. Who's the biggest criminal of them all?
Well, you know,
they bill on credit cards, dead people who are dead and gone are billed, and then the relatives are a little bit iffy because you can get declared for asking for refund. They bill on dead people, they gouge money, they steal, they bankrupt. Their financial irregularities, John, are 1,000 times more than any person who departed. It's a rigged casino where they feel only they must win. The house is going to win. It's going to get your money. You're just this dupe walking in the casino, but wait, we're going to get your cash. Don't you agree it's a rigged casino?
Oh, it's and worse. There's a common psychological concept, just world syndrome, and it's the idea that if something bad happens to somebody, they deserve it. The idea is written up as karma within Hinduism and Buddhism. So the idea is that you blame the victim when something bad happens to somebody, and it's a disastrously bad idea. So people have the idea that if you did these dreadful things that Scientology has been doing, certainly right from the very beginning. Hubbard was, there were 5 Dianetic Research Foundations in 1950, 2 of them run by psychologists, by the way. There you go, psychs. But there were 5. One of them was run by a vice admiral. There were 5 of them, and he went in and he took the money out of all of them. He went in and took cash out of all of them. And, I was told a story by somebody who was with him on a day that he bought a brand new Cadillac for his girlfriend. He was married, but he had a girlfriend, great expert on family values. And he bought a Cadillac with cash money. He just pulled the money out and paid for it. And the one phrase that I heard repeatedly, and I had about 150 informants to the book I wrote, a lot of people. And again and again, people would say, he spent money like water. This is a man who died with 2,000 camera pieces. A single Hasselblad will probably cost you $10,000. 2,000 cameras, a 24-track recording studio, a full-scale racetrack, Aberdeen Angus bulls, black swans, and he's got people who he's refusing to allow toilet tissue to because they're down statistic. They're not earning enough money for him to put in a little pile of attaché cases that he kept in the mobile home where he lived, each case having $100,000, just in case he had to leave town quickly. I mean, probably most people who've been involved with Scientology don't know that they were able to fingerprint the corpse of L. Ron Hubbard very rapidly in San Luis Obispo because he'd been busted for kiting a check. It was 1948. So they got his fingerprints on record. That was how quickly they could do it. In terms of the smear campaigns, I was harassed for 16 years. The late Arnie Lerma, when I asked him for a puff piece for the new edition of Let's Sell These People a Piece of Blue Sky, he said, before the internet and safety in numbers, there was Jon Atack. And there is some truth to that. There was also Jerry Armstrong. There was also Lawrence Wollersheim and the great and unsung Bob Penny. Bob Penny, the creator of FatNet, incredible man, brilliant man. There was also Marjorie Wakefield. There was not just me, but there weren't many of us. And I was accused of, rumors were put around that I was a rapist. I had attempted murder by trying to strangle a girl with a scarf at some point. Skip Press told me that when they came to him and said, "You can't believe this man's book. He was a heroin addict." It was like, what? I've never seen heroin in my life, So, yes.
Well, Hubbard said, find or manufacture
enough threat.
Manufacture. This is made out of whole cloth.
Yeah, and it'll be the same allegations, child abuse, wherever you go, that there'll be the same allegations. That, of course, in the real world has a tremendous benefit that people, even the peccadillos of my teens, nobody believes them because, Scientology probably said that. So I could get away with just about anything now, I think.
Yeah. Well, Scientology, if you've watched this video all the way up to this point, we've run about an hour, I'm guessing. I want to tell you, if you're even thinking or you have a relative hovering on whether Scientology is a good idea, Scientology is where you will be extorted for every penny you have. In fact, they want your future money of your future earnings because you put it all on credit card in future debt. And beware, you are in peril at your own risk. If you step in, the whole design and architecture of Scientology is to suck out like an octopus with all its tentacles every last dime you have. Yeah. Don't say you weren't warned. Listen to some of the money features in this video and don't let Scientology, the predator, prey on you for your finance. They are a money vampire sucking up money group, and they are professional. In fact, the 4 people arriving late at night, ringing your doorbell and arriving became what they call a successful action. So they repeated that over and over and over, a gang of 4 against 1, staying there till you're exhausted and worn down till 3 in the morning, and they walk away with 6 figures, even if you don't have the money. And finally, Tony Ortega in the last week did 2 posts showing the criminality of money extortion. One is on the scam of Chase Manhattan Bank. Chase Manhattan is a huge United States bank.
Yeah.
In fact, Chase funded the Titanic. Chase was the one.
Look what happened to that.
Anyway, we try to give some education here. Jon is a natural born teacher. And I hope that in this video, you've learned of your peril in stepping into, these are high professionals who've studied how to close you and how to suck out your money. Scientology wants your money, period.
And if you can find a copy of my friend Roger Nygaard's movie Suckers, which is based on car salesmanship, and it has a wonderful documentary attached by the salesman who helped him, you will, if you've been involved in Scientology, be possibly surprised to see that exactly the same tricks are used by people who sell used cars.
Used car salesman. Well, Jon, I think that we've enlightened. Now, I'd like to do a part 2 on money, because there's more mileage on this. I'd like to do part 2, because here's the thing, Jon, that we didn't cover. Not only do they suck in your life's hard-earned cash, but they don't pay taxes. And they use the city and the county and the state to pay free medical. Yeah. They use free police, free fire engines, free all the services of the city you can imagine, free.
Which means you're paying for it.
Your labor 80 hours a week, but they don't then pay. There's no exchange. So I want to talk of exchange and rip-off and not paying, but utilizing. So that's like a part 2. I've got some great anecdotes when we get back into the money thing. Jon, it was lovely hanging with you. I want you to heal fast.
Oh, I will do.
Get well soon. I'm so sorry you had this fall, but with your glasses, it's hardly noticeable. Yeah. Anyway,
I'm fine.
Jon, thank you for inviting me. Hope to see you in about a month.
Yeah, we will. We'll talk then, and have a fantastic Christmas.
Thank you, Jon, and you.
If it's okay to mention Christmas,
politically incorrect for all those being
enjoy Hanukkah and
happy whatever season, holidays. Yeah.
Grand, thank you so much, Karen. Always a pleasure.
Jon, you're a pleasure too, and I will see you soon.
Yes, see you soon.
Take care, my love.
You
bye
too.
bye. Bye, everybody.
Hi, Jon here. Thanks for watching. We'd appreciate it very much if you would click like, as well as subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Every dollar helps, and we welcome new patrons on Patreon, or you can make a one-off payment with any currency through PayPal. Thanks so much.